Now, a little while ago I saw a portable welding table at Princess Auto, and it looked pretty cool. It's 200 bucks. It wasn't 200 bucks cool. I thought, I can come up with something better for less. There are a couple of different versions of ironing board that you might want to look at. This type has two legs heading off in each direction, so this is called a four-leg. And this type has one leg in each direction, so it's called a two-leg design. The two-leg version is typically not quite as strong as the four-leg version. Still, I'm going to be using this today. I picked up this for $10 at my local hardware store in the bargain basement. Why $10? Well, the top is ripped, and you can't have an ironing board with a ripped top now, can you? We don't need the top, it comes off. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this top part off. I'm going to salvage the slide rails that the feet run on. I will put some square tubing on top of the slide rails to stiffen them up, and then on top of that I will put a 2 foot by 3 foot surface made out of more square tubing, cut up into 1 foot by 1 foot grid, and then put a bit of expanded metal mesh on top of that, non-galvanized, and it'll be ready to go. What I might also do is, since this is a two-leg design, I might stiffen it up by putting some braces along here. So, why don't we get started? Now, before I go any further, married guys, listen to me. Get your own ironing board. Do not use your wife's ironing board. You'll never hear the end of it. Don't ask me how I know. I do need this four-leg ironing board just for a little while. I'm going to be using that as a temporary welding table until I get my actual welding table done. Once the temporary welding table is, once I'm done with it, once I'm done using it, I can just put the top back on it. Nobody will ever know. Until it's time to replace the towel. Now, these tops are only welded on in a couple of places, so if you can spot those areas, you can mark them off and you can grind them instead of trying to pull this stuff off. Now, this stuff is sharp. Wear safety gloves when you're pulling it out. Put the safety gloves on before you cut yourself. We'll set this aside and we will start working on the top frame. So here's our two longer pieces. These will be the side rails. These will be the top and bottom of the frame. And now we will use this ironing board as a layout table and a welding table just to weld up this frame.
Now, what I'm doing here is I'm gripping the pieces with a set of locking pliers, and that does a couple of things. One, it holds them together ready for welding, and it also makes sure that the pieces line up properly, top and bottom. They all lay flat. By using a square, I can check roughly to make sure that these pieces are going to square up properly, and I'm just tack welding the corners into place to get it ready for final welding.
Okay, now that we've got it tacked together, there's a neato little trick to making sure that something that you want square is square. And that trick is to measure the piece corner to corner. Those two measurements should be the same when they're square. Oh, 43 and an 8 by 43 and 5/8. So we squeeze it a little this way. Three-eighths. 43 and 3/8. 43 and 3/8. Perfect. Okay, so I've marked out and cut two of the cross pieces that'll be going in here. I put some marks 1 foot in from each end where these braces are going to go, and we're going to tack those in place now. Okay, I've cut my 1 foot pieces. I actually had a little more metal than I expected, so I'm going to be putting two pieces in each spot here. It'll be 8 by 12 squares, and then I'll cut a couple more to go in here, and then we'll weld those up.
Yesterday, when I was cutting away at the top of the ironing board, I cut the end rails, the slide rails, a little too short. When the legs are in the upright position, this cross piece sits just nicely in here, but when it's laid out flat, it extends way beyond the rails. So what I'm going to have to do is replace these rails. These rails have it's a C channel, which this pin runs in, and so I'm going to have to take some of this inch by inch angle iron and use it to replace this, replace the top and the side, and then put on some flat stock along the bottom, weld it in place to accept this pin so that it slides back and forth nicely. So I've got a little more work ahead of me than I was expecting, but I've got the bits and pieces here that I need. I know the dimensions that I need, so I'm going to get started.
Always remember, put on your safety glasses before you get something in your eye. Put on your hearing protection before you get the ringing in your ears.
Now here I'm cutting off the old rails, measuring up the new ones to make sure that I've got the right lengths. The pieces that I'm working with are inch by inch angle iron. This is leftover scrap from another project. It's a little dirty, it needs some cleanup. So I clean these up with a wire brush and drill the appropriate holes using the old rails as a template. And fit everything together, make sure everything's okie dokie. If I had 1 inch by 1 inch C channel, I could use that. But I only have the angle iron and some flat stock, so I use that instead. The flat stock will make the other side of the C channel, and that works out anyway, because the one side of the C channel has to be a little narrower than the other in order to work properly. This is a little bit fiddly, but all in all, I'm quite happy with it.
This is a little bit of flat stock left over from another project, and it's about 1/8 inch thick. This is plenty thick enough to work as a cross piece, and we'll make up a couple of 6-inch pieces right now. Just about right. Perfect. I'll take it. All right, we got one. That's good. Okay, next thing we have to do is we have to put these pieces back in. These are the retainers that sit in here that work with the locking mechanism. Now, when I was working with this before, I noticed that the notches in these retainers were a little shallow. So what I'm going to do before I put those back in is I am going to deepen those with a Dremel tool. Back in a bit. Okay, now for a little bit of assembling. I've deepened some of the marks along here, along these pieces, so that they will sit properly in these holes. And there were some plastic wheels on here to allow it to run back and forth a little easier. I think plastic is a terrible choice when we're dealing with a welding table. So I've got a couple of extra little bits and pieces of the 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch square tubing, and these are going to slip right on the ends. Those are going to be my new runners. So let's do some assembly, and then we will put another piece of flat angle iron, or a piece of flat bar stock across here to make a C channel, and then we'll weld that on, and then we can put the top on. Let's see how well this works. Alright, let's get the top, shall we? Okay, now here's our top, and as we did yesterday, what we did was we made up the frame out of 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch square tubing, 2 foot by 3 foot. We cut a couple of pieces of square tubing 2 feet long to go in, a foot from each end. And we made up some 1 foot pieces to go in between here to break these up into 8 inch. So the grade is about 12 inches by 8 inches. And then on top of that, we laid on a piece of expanded metal mesh, flat, non-galvanized. Lined it all up nice. Oh, to make sure that the thing was square, what I did was measured from corner to corner. And once the measurements from corner to corner were equal, I knew the thing was square. Then we put on the metal mesh on the top, put a couple of tacks in the center here so that it would stay together, so that when we flipped it over and tacked it, it would hold. And we put several tacks around the edges and a couple in the middle just to make sure that everything is going to stay where it ought to. Just for fun, let's measure this and see how flat it is. I am quite happy with this. This thing is flat. All right. Okay, we're just about there. I've got these cross braces cut, and I'm going to tack those into place. I'm then going to put a couple of tacks on these rails and here. And these rails I'm still not happy with. They're still not sitting quite as even as I'd like them to. So I'll start on this end and work towards this end, and as I get towards this end, I will bend these bits and pieces up as I weld them. Right now I'm pretty happy with the way things are sitting. They seem to be fairly straight and level. So let's just start welding things together. And there it is, my brand new welding table. Completely adjustable, folds down to nothing when you're done. Easily holds 25, 40 pounds of equipment, material to work on. Nice and flat. You can set your material anywhere on the surface, grab anywhere on the edge for a ground clamp, and away you go. And when you're done, you just flip the lever, pack it down to nothing.